Hello everyone, and welcome back to my Oxygen Not Included playthrough series, where I'm going to be showing you how to construct a base that will last you from early game until the ultra late game. In my previous video, I showed you how to construct a few basic amenities for your base. So I focused on providing some basic power production through the use of these manual generators, some basic research, oxygen production, and food production. In this video, I'm going to be focusing on improving our power production by creating both smart batteries as well as coal generators. The combination of smart batteries and coal generators will allow us to effectively generate a lot of power with very little duplicate input, and it's going to waste no coal because the generators will only turn on when power is required. All right, let's get right into it. The first thing I'm going to do is begin the research that will end up unlocking both the coal generators and the smart batteries. So by clicking R, going to the research tab, we can see coal generators and smart batteries exist on the same research tree. So I'm just going to click at the very end of the research that I want, and my duplicants will go through these research tasks one by one. All right, excellent. There is a problem, however. Previously, we only had to deal with this blue research, which is novice research. You can complete this by using just the basic research station. However, this final sound amplifiers research task, which unlocks the smart batteries, requires not just blue research, but also purple research or advanced research. In order to complete this research, we'll need to build some supercomputers, which is why in the previous video, we completed this basic research and unlocked the supercomputer. So I'm going to go ahead and, queue up a little bit of additional space to place the supercomputers. Didn't actually need to put those develop tasks. And I'm going to hook up the supercomputers to the rest of the power in the base. All right. So when I'm hooking up new machines, it's important to remember that it's possible to overload the circuits in your base. So this basic wire has a maximum capacity of 1,000 watts, and these supercomputers end up requiring 120 watts to operate. So we're adding a quarter of the capacity of the wire on just by adding these two supercomputers. But we can see here that currently only 360 watts can potentially be drawn at any time. The sum of all of the power draw on this circuit at once, not including these two supercomputers which have not yet been built, is only 360 watts. So once these are built, we're still well within the 1,000 watt limit, which means it's safe for us to actually build these supercomputers. So I'm going to increase the priority of these tasks because I want these supercomputers built quickly so I can get the research done. And let my duplicants go ahead and activate super speed. So while the duplicants are building these supercomputers and doing some basic research, we should probably look around the base and check to see what the status of our surroundings are. By clicking the F1 tab, we can see that our current oxygen saturation is quite good. There's a lot of oxygen all over the base, which means our duplicants are not in danger of suffocating anywhere. However, we can see that carbon dioxide is beginning to pool at this middle left of the base. Part of the reason for this is because there's no way for oxygen and carbon dioxide to trade places on this left side. This is effectively the lowest point that carbon dioxide can get to, unless it goes all the way across the base. However, there's a high pressure of oxygen over here, which is forcing its way up and pushing the carbon dioxide back this way. It's not that carbon dioxide can't get through this gap, but it's going to happen very slowly. And what's most likely going to happen is that this will end up becoming a big pool of carbon dioxide, which is something we'd like to avoid. So on an even higher priority than this task of research that I'm aiming to finish, I'm going to get rid of all of this, all these tiles in the way of this airflow and allow the base to breathe more effectively. So let's put this on priority 8, and I'll even get rid of this tile over here, which is as much as I can do without unlocking all of this additional carbon dioxide. Okay. The last concern that I have is the food production in this space. Currently, there's 5,000 kilocalories of muckroot and some nutrient bars, which is enough for one cycle of my duplicants. Each duplicate requires 1,000 kilocalories, so this 5,000 kilocalories is only enough for one more cycle, which means that I'm in serious danger of beginning to starve. This food production that I've set up will eventually be sufficient, but isn't sufficient yet to give my duplicants enough food. So I'm going to also tell my duplicants to unbury all of these muck roots. They only give 800 kilocalories each, but that's almost enough for one more cycle because each duplicate requires 1000 kilocalories. This is almost enough. And then sometime at the end of this cycle or next cycle, I'll end up building a micro musher, which will give me additional food. Okay. So I'm going to get rid of this, this sand that's fallen. Increase that to priority 9 just to prevent my buildings from being covered. And hopefully my duplicates manage to complete this task. Excellent. So we shouldn't have any duplicates going to the bathroom on the floor. And already we can see that the carbon dioxide is managing to make its way across and down to the bottom of the base. Excellent. All right. So we temporarily managed to assuage our food problems. However, this isn't enough to actually fix the problem. In order to allow us to have more food in the base, I'm going to build a microbe musher. One of the reasons for that is because the 3.5 meal woods per duplicate number that I came to in the previous video relied on you turning all of the meal lice that comes from these meal wood into lice loaf at the microbe musher. So it'll take the 1,200 kilocalories you get from the meal lice and turn it into 1,700 kilocalories at the microbe musher, I believe at the cost of about 50 kilograms of water. So a substantial increase in food. The second reason is because even when there isn't meal lice available, while your duplicates still have very low morale requirements, it can be useful to create... the word is escaping me. It's a particular type of food. It's very low quality. Mush bars. So mush bars just require dirt and water in order to create. The quality of a mush bar is extremely low. But right now your duplicates couldn't care less what the quality of the food is because they don't have enough skill points or morale requirement to cause any negative effects if they eat very low quality food. So especially at the beginning of your game, it can be very useful to tide over your base while you don't have enough food supply with mush bars. But later on in the game, it becomes quite a problem because your duplicates will often take a big morale hit if they don't have the food that is of much higher quality. Okay, the research has been completed. So we now have access to coal generators as well as smart batteries. However, there's a problem. Our smart batteries require refined metal in order to build. So if I go to, pause the game for a moment, the power tab and look at my smart batteries, I can see that I don't have any refined metal available. So in order to build that, there's a number of ways that you can potentially make it, but I like to go directly for a more sustainable approach and not waste my materials. So I'm going to go to this metal refinery, which is the typical way that you're going to be refining raw metals into refined metals. So just by clicking it, I'll allow my duplicates to begin the arduous process of unlocking this metal refinery. The metal refinery itself is going to require some more research in order to actually operate it because it requires liquid coolants. And liquid coolants are going to require me to get some liquid pumps, which is another research. And I'm going to need to hook them all up together. I'll give that one a more thorough explanation as we get closer to it. Alright, so here we can see some meal lice has dropped from our meal wood. And before my duplicates come and eat this meal lice, although it's perfectly fine for the duplicates to come and eat it right away, I would much rather the micro musher turns this meal lice into lice loaf because it will add a significantly larger amount of it will add a significant number of calories, basically increasing the calorie count of these meal lice by 50%. So I'm going to click this, have it make meal lice into lice loaf forever. I'm going to unclick this mush bar just to make sure that it prioritizes the lice loaf. And I'm going to go to the consumables tab at the top right of the screen. And here we can see checks that tell new duplicants or all of your existing duplicants what they're allowed to eat. So I'm going to go and click right on the meal lice icon itself. And you can see that all of the duplicants have unchecked their meal lice, which means that no one is allowed to eat this anymore. In addition, this row here that says new duplicants, that instructs any duplicant that you print at the printing pod to have the same allowances as whatever is on the top of this bar. So any new duplicants that you print will not be able to eat meal lice as well. This way we're going to force the duplicants to leave the valuable raw materials and only eat the finished products. Okay. New blueprint is available. I'm looking to build some more duplicants because I want to get my numbers up to 8. Let's see. So this one is an excellent cook. This one is good at ranching. Ranching is eventually what a lot of my duplicants are going to be focusing on, at least in the mid-game. So these both have ranching. However, I'm just beginning to cook right now, and I think it can be quite useful. So I'm going to take auto, because none of the other effects are particularly negative. Nobody has the loud sleeper trait, so they're all pretty interchangeable, but this one seems to be most immediately useful. Next, I'm going to go to the priorities tree. Oops, sorry, not priorities tree. I'm going to go to the skills overlay, and I'm going to choose a hat for my new duplicant. So I know that I chose them because they wanted to do cooking tasks. So partly because I'm barred from choosing any research tasks, I'm going to give them the grilling trait and a grilling hat so that the duplicant is easily identifiable based on its main priorities. And then I'm going to go to the priorities tab and change its priorities to force it to prioritize cooking over other tasks. And that way I don't need to have the micro musher on a very high priority. I can just leave it at a normal priority and still be sure that this task will be completed. So by going to the very top, we can see this ellipsis signal. And just like with the consumables tab, where clicking this changes the options for everything, I'm going to click on cooking. I'm going to choose disallowed. So none of my duplicants are allowed to cook anymore. And then I'm going to go to auto, who hasn't currently put their hat on yet because they just went to bed. And I'm going to click either left or right click, and it's going to cycle through all the different priority options. For example, very low priority, standard priority, which you can see in most of these locations. And I'm going to stop at very high priority. The priority window that you can see here is the most important system that determines what tasks a duplicant is going to do. So far in this video and the previous video, by going to P, I can choose the priorities of various tasks, and you can see that these research tasks, which actually I'm going to increase the advanced research to the same level, are a level 7, which means that any duplicant who is available to do work will prioritize doing these tasks over any of the level 5 tasks, which are the standard priority. However, this priority window takes precedence, which means that if Otto, who has a very high priority for cooking, sees a level 1 priority cooking task or a level 9 priority research task, just for the sake of example, Otto will first check to see if there's a difference in priority in this window, of which this is a higher priority, so they will do the level 1 task. The priority window here with the numbers is only important if both of these have the same level of priority. All right, so let's just fix what I did here. I'm going to change this to priority 6. And good. All right. So once these meal lice are all used up, I'm going to take this micro musher and deselect the lice loaf task, or rather, I'm just going to add on the mush bar task, just so that I can begin pumping up the kilocalorie numbers. I just want to make sure that they go through this more valuable food first, rather than wasting it. Okay, let's just quickly check our research, and we can see that we're almost finished researching the metal refinery. We've done the prior 2 researches. This is the only one left. Alright, so now that this is finished, I'm going to add on the mush bar task, so Otto can continue to cook, because we're going to need some more food. And I'm going to start telling my duplicants to clear out this area, because I need some place to put my metal refinery. So just like that. So anytime duplicants have some additional time, they have a task they can complete. It's a good thing that I told Otto to start building the mush bars again, because we're down to 800 kilocalories. Since we added on the micro musher, this circuit has gotten very close to its maximum 1000 watt capacity. So anything else that we add onto the circuit might need to go through a different, we might need a different power circuit. All right, excellent. So our research has completed, and I'm going to go ahead and build one of these metal refineries. However, currently I won't be able to use it because I don't have any liquid coolant. So I'm going to set that task to build, and then I'm going to begin the research towards something that will give me liquid coolant. So I'm going to go to this basic plumbing research, which will give us liquid pumps, and that's what we need. So a lot of these researches in this game are very intertwined, and this is why I tend to prioritize getting as much research as possible at the beginning of the game, because you don't need to worry about maintaining complicated systems all over the map. You can have your duplicants subsist on the most basic of resources, like, for example, mush bars, which otherwise become useless later on in the game, and go ahead and get all of these time-consuming researches finished, and then you can have your duplicants go off and do whatever tasks are required, without having to bring them back home to complete more research. So they finished another research, which gives us our liquid pumps, and we're going to do yet another research to give us some heavy wire, which will allow us to hook up more sturdy power systems. So this basic wire can go through tiles, has a minimal decor penalty, which, let's see, decor is F8. And so if you go over this this wire, we can see that the wire is the total minus to decor in this particular block is minus 13.5, because 3 wires are giving minus decor within a range that affects this block. So it's not a big hit to decor, but the heavy watt wire that we're researching currently gives a massive hit to decor. It's so bad that unless you build tons of decor increasing buildings, which can take a lot of duplicants' time and a lot of raw materials, it's difficult to have anything but a maximally negative decor in that area. I find personally that it's most useful to just completely ignore decor. Even in late game at, say, 2000 cycles, I find that having maximally negative decor all over the place has almost no impact on my ability to function in the game. It doesn't impact my duplicants' morale, because you have a lot of options to improve morale by, say, building rooms or having very high quality food. And they give you so much morale that your duplicants don't really need the morale boost from having high decor. So I prefer to have a more functional base with heavy watt wire transferring power around and not have to worry about lots of circuits. And just accept that I'm not going to get much decor bonus. So we'd like to build the liquid pump that we just researched to allow us to put some liquid coolant into this metal refinery. However, we don't have enough raw materials. So I'm going to go ahead and dig out some more copper, which you can see here is this kind of goldish brownish color. It's copper color, which should give us enough materials in order to actually complete this task. And I'll just put this to priority 6. Not high enough to stop them from doing more important tasks, but high enough to stop them from doing things like tidying. So our liquid pump, we have enough materials ready. Sorry about that, my mouse just glitched out. And I'm going to build it as well as some liquid pump, or some liquid pipes. So something important to note is that liquid pipes can go through tiles. However, in order for a duplicant to access the space to build the liquid pipe, any natural tiles will have to be removed. So you can build them through regular tiles without any difficulties. You don't have to remove the regular tiles, but you will have to remove, say, for example, the sandstone. So when you're building the pipe, you can't simply click and drag like this from this green output that's outputting upwards to this white input, which we need to supply the liquid coolant, because your duplicants will come and open up this path. This is actually fine because this wall of tiles will remain, which prevents the water from just leaking into your base. But if I were to instead build it like so, the wall would be deconstructed and all of this water here in this top level would begin flowing into our base, perhaps preventing duplicants from operating a machine because they'll become flooded, or creating a pool of water that can be difficult to deal with later on. So I'm going to build it like this, and having this tile deconstructed is no problem. In addition, I'm going to build another line of pipe that's going to go up and over top here, because this building, this metal refinery, requires an output. So it needs somewhere to put the hotter liquid coolant once it's been used out. So we'll put it back into the pool of water. And very slowly over time, as we continue to refine metals, it's going to keep drawing in water, heating it up, and then putting it back. And the overall temperature of this pool of water will start to rise. Once this pool of water, I can't remember where in the range between 60 and 80 degrees Celsius, it's going to get hot enough that continuing to refine metals will cause it to turn to steam, which will break the pipe and potentially scald your duplicants, which can be quite a problem. But below 60 degrees Celsius, you should be safe, at least for most refining tasks. There are some that can cause problems. So just keep an eye on the temperature here, and when it starts to reach around 60 degrees, watch the output temperature of water that comes out of this metal refinery, and if it gets close to 100 degrees Celsius, you're going to need to stop refining or find some way to cool down this water. We have a new blueprint available. Let's check for another duplicant. Immediately we can see that none of them have the loud sleeper trait. And currently farming is our most vital task. So let's actually get this Gene who has a high farming skill. All right. So let's go to the skills immediately. We'll check Gene. We'll improve her farming and give them the farming hat just so that we can visually identify them. Oh, unfortunately, I waited too long to have my duplicants clear out these outhouses, and some duplicants have gone to the bathroom on the floor. This creates some polluted water, which, if you don't clean it up, will cause bacteria to generate and will give off polluted oxygen. It doesn't cause bacteria to generate so much as it creates polluted oxygen, which itself allows bacteria to generate if it comes in contact with any bacteria. So you can have a space that's fully saturated with polluted oxygen and no bacteria will grow, or polluted water, no bacteria will grow. But as soon as any bacteria gets into that space, it will grow very rapidly. So we can nip that in the bud by just getting rid of it immediately. So when I clicked the mop task by pressing M, I clicked 9 right afterwards, which you can do manually by clicking this little bar that shows up when you click the mop task, and that just makes sure that you get rid of that polluted water as quickly as possible. Going to the materials overlay and going to gas, we can already see that some of this greenish polluted oxygen has spawned, which means if any germs manage to get into the base, they're already going to have places where they can grow. So that needs to be dealt with eventually. Okay. So things are looking good. We have a way to cool our metal refinery. Our metal refinery just requires metals, raw materials like these, this copper. So we have plenty of that. It's going to make the refined metal. All we need to do to make the coal generators is some unrefined metal, and we need some refined metal for the smart batteries. However, we do require one more research, and that is to get automation wire. The smart batteries can only automate the coal generators, turn them on and off, if they're connected by using these automation wires. So we need to finish this pair of research as well. However, that should be the last research that's required at this time. All right, let's finish this floor. Excellent. So plenty of food has been created, just to prevent anything from potentially going bad, although realistically it's not a problem at this point. It's just a good habit, I think, to get into. I'm going to turn off this mush bar from being generated. And we'll wait to begin the next cycle. So it turns out that I didn't need to turn this off. My duplicates hadn't yet eaten for the day, so I should have checked that first. But if my duplicates had already finished eating at that point, then I would probably turn off this mush bar generation and turn it back on after one more day is completed. All right, excellent. So most of these buildings have neared completion. We're waiting for them to finish. I still haven't hooked these buildings up to any sort of power source yet. So I'm going to put all these 4 buildings onto the same power grid, and I'm going to use heavy watt wire to connect them. The only difficult part of this is getting this liquid pump, which is underwater, connected. And alright, let's just check. No, alright. So I'm going to place some heavy watt wire temporarily, just to make a teaching moment. So we can see here that I have some heavy watt wire placed, but no more heavy watt wire is available. And in fact, if we go over to this resources menu, and we check our copper ore, we can see that we currently have 1,300 kilograms out of our available 525 kilograms allocated to tasks, which means we have built more buildings and more items in the game than we actually have resources to go through with that building. So our duplicates are going to build some of those buildings, and eventually they're going to have to stop. So anytime you see a grayed out symbol like this in our resources menu, you can know that you are either completely out of resources, or you may be backed up and your duplicates are being prevented from completing their tasks because there aren't enough raw materials. So this is something really important you want to look for. In fact, once the duplicates have finished as much of this as possible, then some red flag indicators are going to show up. So we'll let that occur. Just increase this priority to 9 to make it happen a little bit faster. Okay. And this indicates that whatever resources required for these tasks, any duplicates that were in range of building these tasks, so any duplicate here, for example, a duplicate that was trapped and had no way of potentially accessing it. Oh, interesting. A duplicate that was trapped and had no way of accessing it would have no effect on this. They could have as much copper as they wanted, and you would still see this insufficient resources copper tag show up on this side if there wasn't enough copper over here. So this is a much more visual way of realizing that there aren't enough resources available. However, by the time you reach this point, you may have some vital task that you're completing. So for example, perhaps you're in the middle of working in a slime biome that has lots of germs in it, and polluted oxygen is flowing into your base, and you've queued up tasks to build a large wall to keep that polluted oxygen out. If you wait until you run out of resources and it visually shows you, you then have to send your duplicants off to mine materials in order to actually build that wall. However, if you keep your eye on this resources tab and just see when things turn gray, you can have a much more advanced notification that just as you build the wall and you give it a moment to run in-game, it should indicate that there isn't enough resources available. So you can nip that whole problem in the bud. All right. So this is fine. I'm going to need some more copper. In fact, I'm going to get the copper, I think, from just over here. But soon I'm going to open this up and get all the copper from in there. So put that as priority 8. Right, and I'm going to need to join these two parts of this power circuit. So this heavy watt wire, unlike the regular wire, cannot go through tiles, which has the unfortunate side effect that I have no way of blocking this water if I want to create a direct line from here to here from flowing into the base. So what I need is a special type of tile called a heavy watt joint plate. And what it does is it functions like a regular tile, but also allows heavy watt wires to connect to that tile on both ends. So if I build this joint plate like this, I can only have heavy watt wires connect up to here and then out like that. I can't have them go through this way or in through this way. So it's limited, but that's just part of how the game works. So it's not very pretty, and it's not the way that this space is going to stay, but I'm going to build this heavy watt joint plate. Oh, I'm not allowed to build it right there. Oh, that's right, because that takes up 4 tiles. Okay, I'm going to build it right there. I'll get rid of this tile of heavy watt joint plate, and instead connect it up like this. So just to make sure that the water doesn't flow, I'm actually going to cancel that and have that task be prioritized. Sorry, this might look a little bit messy. All right, now that that's gone, I'm going to put a tile here, prioritize that as priority 9. Okay, and now that there is a wall built of this artificial tile and this natural tile, I'm going to get rid of this, or rather than digging it out first, I'm just going to place that. Okay. And now I'm free to put this here and finish up this hookup. Okay, so now our base can, it's supplying power to 2 different circuits. We have one here that's almost maxed out in the power that we can use without overloading it, and we have another one here that's using actually 50% more power potentially than this circuit is, so enough to already overload it by itself. But it can withstand 20 kilowatts rather than 1 kilowatt. And eventually, this is why we're going to have everything working off heavy watt wires. Right. So to have our smart batteries built, we're going to need some of this refined metal. Each one's going to require 200 kilograms of material. So I'm going to have 4 tasks queued up, which will give us 400 kilograms of material, 100 kilograms per task. And then I'll add a 5th task for another 100 kilograms of material. So that's enough for 2 smart batteries and 100 kilograms that will go towards our automation wire. And we'll choose another duplicant. So we have this one that's flatulent. That causes them to produce natural gas at random intervals. This can be a potential source of power, excuse me, but it takes a lot of automation to really make use of it, and it doesn't really give you very much power. I think it's better to stay away from a flatulent duplicant, because if you are trying to make water locks, for example, in a hurry, and you make a very basic water lock design, the flatulent duplicant can actually break the water lock, and it could allow your food to spoil or to allow polluted air to get in. So I just tend to stay away from them a little bit, although it's not a big deal. If you pay a lot of attention to how you build your locks, then it really isn't a problem. But for this playthrough, I'm just going to avoid it. So I'm going to go ahead and get Max, who's good at doctoring, which almost never matters. Although it can, especially if you have to deal with a lot of high heat situations and you don't have Atmos suits available yet. Okay. So I'm going to get max. I'm going to give them advanced researching just because I don't really care about the medicine. Okay. Actually going to go through here, get them advanced researching, just so that they get skill points a little bit faster. Okay, excellent. So Stinky is good at farming. Let's just indicate that. They are good at science. That's fine. Mary is good at nothing really. Okay. So they can remain without a hat. And Max will be given a medicine hat perhaps at some point in the future if I ever do give them doctoring. Okay, excellent. So we're just currently waiting on duplicates to finish off some of this copper production. In fact, actually we need some more copper. So I'm going to dig out this area here with all of this carbon dioxide, because once this task is completed, in the next video, my new task is going to be dealing with the polluted oxygen that's already entered the base, and dealing with the carbon dioxide that has entered as well. Sorry. So I can leave them in priority 5 because my duplicates have more or less finished off all the other tasks that are available to them. And I'm going to have them gather up this copper as well. This copper I'll put on priority 8, just so I don't need to think about it again. So they've already completed 3 tasks, which is enough to build a battery and some smart wire. So I'm going to go ahead and deconstruct both this manual generator and this jumbo battery, and replace them with a smart battery that we were intentionally, or that we were building our way up to, and putting a coal generator here. All right. In fact, I'm going to put 2. And hook those up. So putting this on priority 8, just to get the task done as quickly as possible. Okay, so I've left my eye off of this for quite a while, and we have a lot of available food. So I'm going to turn off this mush bar. It's not going to produce any more mush bars, and we're going to allow our duplicates to work their way through some of this food and hopefully prevent any of our food that we have currently from rotting. So here we can see that there's some life loaf that's already getting quite close to rotting. It's only at 30%, so hopefully we'll get through all of it in time, although we might not. And that's, I guess, the price that you pay when you don't pay attention to your food. All right, excellent. So we have coal generators. As soon as the coal generators were built and supplied with power, they started operating because they were already hooked up to a power circuit. So even though nothing is currently demanding power, these coal generators are already running, which is wasting coal. And a lot of players who are new to this game tend to build coal generators and have them constantly burning through their coal supplies. Coal is enough of a resource. It's quite plentiful on the map, and you can use it up to probably cycle 500 or 600, especially if you build some hatches, like stone hatches, quite comfortably. And you don't even need to transition off the coal from then. You could probably push it a few hundred cycles more and still be okay. But if you don't build these smart batteries and you have your coal generators running all the time, you can run out of coal very quickly and be left with no reasonable alternative. So this is why I'm pushing so quickly for coal generators as well as these smart batteries, because these manual generators take an awful lot of duplicate time to keep running. They're inconsistent because like you just need so much power all the time, and anytime night comes and the duplicates are all sleeping, eventually I'm going to have the duplicates working on cycles. So if I can just remember exactly where it is. Here it is, schedule tab. I can have multiple schedules for my duplicates and have it so that there's always a duplicate that's awake. So even during the night, they can come and do these manual generator tasks, but it's just a lot less messy to very quickly transition over to these coal generators and get that done. So here I have automation wire that's going from clicking Shift F2, the automation port on this smart battery over to these coal generators. And currently the coal generators are running, but once they're hooked up to a smart wire, their behavior changes. Then they'll only run when the smart wire that they're attached to has a green signal. So by default, the automation wire has a red signal, which is off. And if any automation device, for example, the smart battery, provides a green signal into the automation wire, the entire wire will turn green and all devices attached to it will receive the green signal. So here you can see that the coal generator is just turned off because the automation wire was built and it doesn't have any signal. So the smart battery sends signals based on how full it is. So if the threshold of the smart battery drops to or below the percentage that you see here at the bottom, it will send a green signal, which tells any attached generators, for example, to start producing power. So if this runs out of power, then it tells the attached generators to produce power. And once it reaches 100% power, it tells the generators to stop producing power. And it will stay red until it drops below the low threshold. So it'll drop all the way down, turn green, and then stay green until it reaches the top again. However, because the game is a little bit messy, there's a potential for you to waste a little bit of coal each time it goes through this entire cycle of going down and up. Because when the battery is very, very close to being full, but not quite full, your generators might produce just a bit too much power. Or it might take a moment for the battery to send a signal to the automation wire, which then sends a signal to the coal generator to stop. So to prevent this, what I like to do is drop this number from 100 to 95, just because it's a nice round number. And also, we don't want the battery completely running out of power before the generators start, because for a moment, all of our devices will stop working, which can break duplicants from doing their tasks and have them reallocate themselves to some faraway task, for example, which wastes a lot of time. So what I like to do is increase this threshold all the way to 80%. So the battery will be rapidly telling the coal generators to turn on and off. It would be more than sufficient to do something like turn it to 20% or maybe even lower, like 10 or 5%. The reason I choose 80% is because I like to have a tiered list of which resources my base uses. So eventually you're going to have plenty of different sources of power. You might have hydrogen, for example. You might use petroleum as a source of power. You might use the coal that's here. You might use natural gas. And depending on how much of these resources are coming into your base, you might want to get rid of some resources before other resources. So here, when this drops below 80%, it's going to tell these coal generators to turn on. But if I had a surplus of hydrogen, for example, I might drop this and say, have this go to 75. Oh, let's drop this first. That took longer than it should have. Move this to 75 and 60. And instead have the 95 and 80 go to the hydrogen. So I might have, say, some hydrogen generators down here and a battery. And once it drops below 80, then the hydrogen generators turn on because I want them to be used first. And then only if the power continues to drop and I really need more power will the coal generators, which start at 60, turn on. And this way you can ensure that you use the resources you want to use first. And you can dynamically change these. It requires you to actually go to the batteries and change them manually. But over time, what resources are most valuable to you or what resources you want to use tends to not change that quickly. So you don't actually have to change these values in the batteries very often in practice. So I'm going to put this back to 95 and 80 just because those are the values that I use for my most or my highest priority power generation. And I'll change these down as I get something else that's renewable. All right, so there we have our smart battery built. We have our coal generators, which only activate when required. I haven't yet hooked up the rest of the base to use the power from this. And in fact, soon I'm going to move this smart battery and these coal generators off to the right, because that's usually where I place all of my power production, just to try and get all those things out of the base and out of the way. Because duplicants don't need to go over to the power production very often. So this high traffic area near the center of my base, I'd like to keep that reserved for something that actually requires a lot of duplicant input. But that's it for this video. I hope you enjoyed, and have a good day.